The torches shook in the warm June wind as the wedding procession moved through the streets of Rome in the year 85 CE, during the rule of Emperor Domitian. June was considered an auspicious month for marriage, yet Flavia Tertia, just 18, walked beneath her saffron veil with a tightening dread. Her hair, braided in the 6 ancient bridal plaits, had been arranged that morning by her mother, who had wept silently through the process. At the time, Flavia had not understood the reason for those tears. She would in 3 hours. The outward wedding ceremony had followed tradition perfectly. The sacrifice of the pig produced favorable omens. Contracts were signed transferring Flavia from her father's legal authority into the hand of Gaius Petronius Celsus, a merchant 23 years older whom she had seen only 4 times before this day. She had spoken the ritual phrase, "Eubi tu Gaius, ego Gaia." With those words, she ceased to belong to herself. She belonged to him. But the ceremony was not the true marriage, only its public beginning. What waited at the end of the torchlit procession, the house she had never entered, was the part no one spoke of directly. The Romans had rituals for everything, but the rituals of the wedding night were surrounded by silence, shame, and euphemism. Her mother's warning had been simple: do not resist. Whatever they require of you, do not resist. Resistance only makes it worse. The crowd surrounding the procession followed custom as well. They chanted obscene Fescennine verses, crude, mocking, describing in explicit detail what the bride would endure that night. Young men shouted suggestions meant to embarrass her. Romans believed such obscenity purified the air by driving away evil through laughter. Flavia did not laugh. She counted her steps. Nuts were thrown at her for fertility. The shells struck her shoulders as she approached her husband's house, decorated with white wool and greenery. 2 torches marked it as a place where consummation would happen before witnesses. And there were many witnesses, far more than she expected. Gaius stood nervously smiling in the doorway, but behind him, shadows moved. Flavia saw 7 figures already assembled inside. A pronuba, a priest, 3 slaves with basins and cloths, a physician with his instruments, and a draped wooden structure that dominated one corner of the atrium. The pronuba, a married woman of spotless reputation, greeted her and held her hands tightly, as if expecting resistance. The rituals, she said, must now be completed. This is the part of Roman marriage history rarely told. Modern depictions show graceful women reclining at feasts, charming wedding customs with saffron veils. But ancient writers, normally unashamed to describe even the most private acts, become strangely vague when speaking of the wedding night, using phrases like, "the customary rites were performed." Some rituals survive only in hostile Christian accounts that preserve them in order to condemn them. The most disturbing of these involved the wooden figure standing, draped in the corner. It was the god Mutinus Tutinus, or Mutinus Titinus, a phallic deity connected explicitly to marriage. Ancient authors mention him reluctantly. Varro refers to him in delicate euphemism. Arnobius and Lactantius call the rites shameful. St. Augustine, describing pagan customs with moral disgust, states plainly that Roman brides were required to sit upon the god's carved phallus before consummation, and that this was done in the presence of witnesses. Modern historians tend to soften this, suggesting symbolic contact. But Augustine's word insider means to sit upon fully. Arnobius's language implies penetration. Lactantius refuses to describe details because they were too obscene. Flavia pulled back the cloth. Beneath it stood a wooden figure carved to human height, its proportions unmistakable. The pronuba instructed her in what to do. Witnesses watched. Her future husband watched. The physician prepared for examination. This ritual was not merely religious, it was preparatory. It broke down resistance. It demonstrated submission. It was proof that a bride would comply. Afterward, slaves washed Flavia in the atrium. The physician approached with clinical coldness. In Roman law, marriage was a transaction. A woman was transferred like property from father to husband. To ensure the transfer was valid, the bride's virginity had to be confirmed before the wedding, and her changed physical state confirmed afterward. Every respectable marriage involved such examinations. Legal disputes relied on the testimony of the pronuba and physician. Consummation had to be witnessed or at least directly verified, because an unwitnessed consummation was legally uncertain. The Romans did not see this as cruel. It was simply procedure, like inspecting a farm before sale. A bride's body was part of the contract. Flavia was led to the marriage bed, positioned for visibility from the open doorway. The pronuba stood nearby. Gaius entered, visibly nervous, glancing at the observers. The pronuba announced the formal words, "The bride is prepared. Let the marriage be consummated in accordance with the laws of Rome and the customs of our ancestors." What followed was neither private nor intimate. It lasted hours. The door remained open. The pronuba observed. The slaves listened. At dawn, the physician returned to perform another examination, documenting the completion of the transfer from virgin to wife. Flavia would give birth to 3 children, run a household, and live as a respectable matron. Yet she would never describe her wedding night to anyone. Roman women did not speak of these rituals. They were too ordinary, too expected, too deeply embedded to require explanation. Silence was tradition. Roman marriage must be understood not as a personal or romantic union, but as a legal, economic transfer of property. The Latin term conventio in manum, coming into the husband's hand, meant the bride became part of her husband's household property alongside land, slaves, and livestock. This concept shaped every ritual of the wedding night. Property transfers in Rome demanded verification, witnesses, inspection. Marriage followed the same pattern. A virgin's reproductive capacity was valuable, therefore, it had to be authenticated. Consummation created heirs, therefore, it had to be witnessed or medically verified. The pronuba's role existed for this purpose. She was guardian, enforcer, and witness. Sources describe her testimony carrying legal weight in disputes. That could not be possible unless she directly observed consummation. For wealthier families, senatorial households, the imperial family, the rituals became even more elaborate. Dynastic marriages required absolute certainty. Multiple witnesses could be present. Medical reports might be archived. Augustus's marriage reforms strengthened verification laws and tied morality to political stability. In such contexts, wedding nights were semi-public legal events. Among the poor, simpler unions existed with minimal ritual. Among slaves, marriages were informal and lacked legal standing. But for the urban middle and upper classes, the majority of recorded Roman society, the rituals Flavia endured were the norm. These practices persisted for centuries because the underlying Roman logic remained unchanged. Women were property, property must be verified, and legal transfers must be witnessed. The transformation came only with Christianity. Christian doctrine assigned women's souls equal to men, introduced spiritual dignity incompatible with property logic, and redefined marriage as a sacrament symbolizing divine union. Public, witnessed consummation and ritualized virginity examinations violated Christian ideas of modesty. Mutinous tutinous and similar phallic rites were condemned as abominations. As Christianity reshaped Rome, it sought not merely to ban these rituals but to erase them. Statues of mutinous were smashed. Descriptions of pagan wedding rites were suppressed. Texts were not recopied and disappeared. Wall paintings were covered. The pronuba's role became symbolic. Within generations, the rituals vanished from memory. What survives today are scattered fragments. Legal texts implying verification procedures, medical writings describing exam techniques, brief references in Varro, Augustine, Arnobius, and Lactantius, archaeological hints, empty rooms designed for observation, paintings depicting witnesses, votive offerings from frightened brides. From these fragments, historians reconstruct an outline. Pre-wedding virginity examinations, ritual sexual contact with phallic deities, witnessed consummation, post-consummation medical verification, documentation for legal protection. But the voices of the women themselves, the ones who endured it, are almost entirely lost. Roman women of Flavia's class rarely left written accounts. Their silence was cultural, not conspiratorial. These rituals were simply the world they lived in. Flavia Tertia lived another 40 years. She became a respected Roman matron, her wedding night a private memory shaped by public ritual. She prepared her daughter for the same fate just as her mother had prepared her. This cycle repeated for generations. Women whispering warnings, performing duties, enduring what society required. Their experiences vanished from mainstream history because later civilizations found them intolerable. Roman achievements, law, architecture, governance were celebrated, while the intimate brutality embedded in Roman marriage was forgotten. The foundation remained, but the truth atop it was smoothed over. Yet the fragments matter. They reveal how a civilization can be advanced and brutal, rational and dehumanizing. They show how normalized systems can mask violence, how legal logic can transform people into property, how societies erase what they no longer wish to remember. The women of Rome, Flavia, her mother, her daughter, and countless others, lived real lives underneath historical silence. Their stories were erased not because they were insignificant, but because they revealed too much about the system that shaped them. The destruction of evidence was an act of moral reinvention, but fragments survive, and from them we remember. Not fully, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to see Roman marriage as it truly was. Enough to understand the rituals Flavia endured. Enough to recognize what was hidden and why.